Thanks for joining the session. I'm Lauren Cook. I lead agency development here at Claravine.
And I'm Therran Oliphant. I'm head of data and technology at EssenceMediacom. And I want to say thank you all for coming and allowing us to host you. We appreciate everybody being here and listening to a little bit about data standards. Hopefully you get something out of it.
So I'm going to kick this off. For those of you who are not familiar with Claravine, we are a cloud-based SaaS platform built for the enterprise marketer and their associated agencies. We take a proactive approach to standardizing data across all channels, technologies. I always like to say we solve a team's collaboration and a people challenge, and we also believe that our clients' campaigns are only as good as the data that powers them. So just to level set for today, topics that we're going to talk about include the importance of collaboration across all teams, brands, agencies, and regions by applying data standards. And then just to set the stage so we're all on the same page, Therran's going to kick us off by defining what data standards are and what it looks like at GroupM.
All right, thank you. So data standards, I think, to me, comprises a multitude of things. But if we really hone in on exactly what that means, the data standardization process really means you understand exactly what your data is and how it is coming into and out of platforms, and that the data that you use to actually go to market mirrors the data that you use to measure the effectiveness of your marketing. And there's a lot in the middle there that we're going to talk about, but really it's connecting the understanding of like what you want to measure when it comes to objectives, KPIs, all of the things that matter, to the final visual of that into either a dashboard or a report, so that you can then go back to your business and say, hey, this is the impact of marketing on our organization.
Awesome. In a recent survey at Claravine, we surveyed our brands and agency partners. 86% of our respondents agree without a data standard practice, their org will fall behind. In your opinion, what happens and at what cost if a data strategy is ignored?
Well, if a data strategy is ignored, as I said in my setup, it is difficult for you to actually measure impact. So we have seen that when data is improperly input into the system, that you can have up to 50% of your conversions not being reported on, or more, depending on how good or how bad the actual input of that data came in. So what you'll find is sometimes you'll go to your agency partners or your analytics partners and you'll say, guys, this can't be right. We have KPIs, XYZ, and what you find is that when they're improperly inputting the data into the system, meaning specifically like when an ad placement goes from the ad server into an actual publisher or a platform, if that data is not being picked up correctly, it's not going to come back. So even if you actually were able to drive some type of action based on that marketing, then there's a huge problem with actually being able to report out on that. So it's different for every business because every business has different metrics. But think about the impact of that on your business. How much money are you spending in marketing? What do you expect back? And understanding that a number of those impressions may not actually be able to be reported on, it creates a massive headache for brands that don't do it properly.
Okay, and on the same survey, we found that 91% agree that putting a data standard practice in place is a must to move forward in a privacy-centric way. That's all the buzz now, right? Why does this matter?
Well, that gets me actually really excited because usually like the data conversation is like at the back of the deck and we get like 5 minutes in one slide. And so the fact that we have an opportunity to actually talk about this is really important because number one, I think it incorporates two things. Data standards have always been important. First off, I will say data normalization, which is essentially making sure that all of your data is input consistently, right? So if I'm reporting, we'll just use a couple of random platforms. So if I'm reporting from Meta and I'm also reporting from Google, I want to make sure that any geography actually is the same values, right? So when we think about normalization, it's especially important that we're able to connect those dots, because if I'm trying to report across various platforms and I can't say what happened in Milwaukee consistently, then I don't have a framework for understanding the impact of my marketing in that geography. Now, you spin that forward to how that is impacted by privacy. It is really important in the privacy landscape, because guess what we don't have anymore? We don't have event logs, right? So there used to be, back in the day, you probably had an analytics person either on your team or at your agency who had the ability to go into the back of the ad server or the back of the platform and get event by event metrics. Literally every impression, every click, they could pull that out and measure it like at an individualistic level. With privacy-centric standards, we cannot do that anymore. Everything is aggregated. So your, I'm going to use another word, taxonomy, rules your ability to differentiate, striate your marketing. So if you want to know what a certain audience did, how well men over 40 performed, then that has to be carried through your data and your taxonomy so that we can report on that. And then if you think about that with normalization, then we need to understand like what happened in various locations or various platforms or publishers to those men over 40 and be able to measure them against each other. So massively important. Like you kind of can't do quality analysis without it.
This might be a little redundant, but what are the biggest challenges you see when data is not standardized? Do you want to hammer home any more?
Well, I'm gonna actually take it a different direction, because the biggest problem that I see is really twofold. I think number one, what we really need is not just standardized data, but actual quality data. So you guys all have digital environments and a physical footprint, and it's the base level of data standardization is understanding the variables that you care about in those different environments. So if you have a product description page on your website, and we're trying to collect information and understand who went to that product description page, what did they read, how far down did they scroll, did they click on anything? All of those variables are carried through in the standards you set in your site level taxonomy. So somebody's got to go into some kind of platform and say, hey, we're picking all of these various things, these events that we care about understanding. And hopefully they're really engaged with like the marketing team, the brand marketing teams, and the performance marketing teams, so that they know what actually to collect, right? So the really important thing there is that you set up your base understanding of this is what we care about. Then the standards come in, because when we go to market, that also has to be represented in the metrics that are in the actual ad itself. So when we serve an ad, there's a whole bunch of metadata in that ad that is created by either an ad server or in something else. We want to connect those dots and make sure that everything works. So I want to be very clear that there are multiple layers to this, and all of them need to flow together and be smooth, so that we're collecting the right things, but then we're also understanding that the things that we collected are the same as what we put into the marketplace.
Can you talk to us about what a successful data architecture strategy looks like to you, and how do you measure success?
Yeah, so it starts with that site taxonomy that I just started talking about. And really, it's the most important thing about that I'll add to what I just said is you really need to, first off, after you kind of understand what you care about, you need to define exactly what the nomenclature is of that. So you'll hear people talk about naming conventions. So there's this idea of making sure that the naming conventions that you have are consistent with what's actually on your site. So that's actually your second layer of taxonomy. And the difficulty with that is that sometimes that is owned or someone has the governance of that in something that can be changed. So if you go back to the beginning of what we were just talking about, if you change it, you can't measure it because it's now not consistent with what you were talking about before or what you were using before or in another location. So the most important thing about a data architecture is a through line, a thread from point A to point Z. And if each part of the process doesn't talk to the last part of the process, it breaks down and you lose the value of those impressions. So we're wanting to get everyone on a very consistent, clean, and easily usable site architecture, data architecture, and naming conventions so that the taxonomies that we build when we actually put an ad into the market for you use all of those elements, and it makes the measurement much easier.
So I have to say, on a daily basis, myself and my team, we are talking to some of the world's most sophisticated data-driven marketers, like yourselves. It amazes me how many of them are passing back and forth an Excel spreadsheet around the globe. So my question is, what are the risks of using Excel for organizing and maintaining data when data management and privacy are so important?
Well, I think that's an interesting question because it comes to what companies like yours do, really. And I think you set it up perfectly. In that, if you have an Excel, you actually have to think about the process, right? So let's think about the operations of advertising. And if you're passing back and forth a spreadsheet to organize your data, it is very easy for somebody to change a number or a word or even the value of a word. And Excel, for as great as it is for macros and all the other cool things Excel can do, it doesn't have fuzzy logic yet. So maybe we can get OpenAI to actually get us some good AI so we can get some fuzzy logic in Excel so that we don't mess it up. But what that means is Excel doesn't necessarily govern your data. It doesn't make you pick up value. So if you have things going back and forth in Excel, even if you're going back in time with version history or looking at things, it always gets messed up. I've never seen an Excel spreadsheet that was used 100% appropriately. So what you actually have to do is take that Excel spreadsheet and put it in a platform that when someone builds an ad, they actually have to input the proper value or you can't actually build any of the naming conventions out to serve the ad. So before the ad goes to market, it catches it. And the tough part about those Excels is I can look at something, and then I have to go to another platform and input that same value. If I don't do it correctly, game over. You've already messed up. So using an Excel is a imperfect way of governing your data. It's not the worst way, but it's imperfect.
Okay, another metric from our survey. On average, we hear analytic teams say it can take up to 8 people 2 to 3 days to resolve errors caused by manual data entry. What can be done to improve this?
Yeah, that governance. So once you have that governance inside of like an actual platform, something that, again, can't be changed, that platform should actually automate the translation of that information into the areas where you're going to market. So it should have integrations and have the ability to take all of that data that you initially decided upon was important for you to understand, then was input into a naming convention, provided in a documentation, input into your system, and then that translate that in an automated fashion so that it takes some of the mistakes out of the process. It takes most of the mistakes out of the process. And that again goes to that kind of assembly line, that operational approach to making sure that your data is governed appropriately.
Okay, this is a big one.
Uh-oh.
As privacy-centric changes by Apple and Google continue to disrupt measurement, what do you see as the biggest risk to a brand if they don't embrace the lack of a signal and continue operating as they always have?
That is a big one. Let me try to break that down. So, privacy changes by Apple and Google, I think, I want to set the stage for one thing specifically. We talk about cookieless a lot. It's really third-party cookieless, right? First-party cookies still totally available to you all. And you can continue to own your relationship with your customer through collecting their data, then enriching that information with like exogenous data sets, like third-party data, work with companies like GroupM and EssenceMediacom to help you do that, and really get an understanding for your customers, right? So I think that's number one. But to be able to do that, you then have to have a very solid understanding of all of your touch points with your consumers or people who are just coming to visit, potential consumers, that allows you to then give that information over to somebody like us in a privacy-centric way, of course, to understand them. The second part is because we don't have tracking across various locations anymore, it is incumbent upon everybody to get to the most granular level possible with aggregate metrics. So if you don't have a third-party cookie when somebody was on a site somewhere else that you served an ad on, it is important that all of the metadata that I was talking about earlier is at the most granular level possible, hopefully down to the audience, location, and understanding of like what type of ad, was there a coupon, was there anything else specific to that communication that you might want to measure or care about or understand, have all of that included in your naming conventions and your taxonomy. Because you can then report on that. So you may not be able to report on the individual, but you can report on very bespoke, specific things that will allow you to understand the value of some of those aggregate metrics in your campaigns. And that right there takes you a huge step further. And then if you have proper data governance, you can then do things like distributed analytics, right? So if I'm collecting reporting or metrics in platform A, the data is the exact same as it is in platform B. So then when I bring them back into my own environment, I can do distributed analytics, right? Now, yes, again, it's aggregate, it's not one-to-one, but it allows me to get very close to the value that I used to have, and it improves my understanding of the necessary elements of those data standards. So you may say, like, I'm not getting this one metric I care about. Well, you can then add it after you do all of those different things. So, with Apple and Google doing what they did, I think it's created a little bit of, well, necessary education, but also flexibility in the market so that people and marketers most specifically start to leverage the various tools that have kind of always been there, but we shunned because it was so easy to use third-party cookies and get event-level reporting. Now we have the impetus really to utilize some of these things because it's absolutely necessary in a world where you can't connect cross-publisher or cross-platform information.
Good answer. To a big problem. Okay, switching gears to AI and creative. How do AI tools used for ad creative and assets impact the data landscape?
Yeah, so this is a fun one. I think I'm really excited about the additional layer that creative puts onto the data landscape. So I was talking a little bit about having as many data elements as you can to measure because that's how you're going to get down to some level of specificity. So like if you have audience metrics, location metrics, all those things of understanding, another layer is creative, right? If you have different creative versions, it is important that you add that into your taxonomy and your naming convention structure because that is another thing that you can measure. Now with AI, it has exploded the number of creatives that we can actually have, right? That we can put in the market. So me as Therran building an ad, I haven't done that in a long time, but if I were to build an ad today, or multiple ads, I can only build so many, right? But if I take, so say you've got message, you've got pictures, you've got colors, you have a carousel of products. All of those things, given a few inputs into an algorithm, can be changed given the platform, the publisher, the audience, the location, and now you've got an exponential level of creative versions. That is more data. I get excited about that, so let me calm down. But like honestly, like those are the things that allow us to really get a deeper level of understanding of how well our marketing performed.
Okay, last question. From my lens, every day I'm talking to brands, marketers, and they have a massive problem. And I think that there's a little bit of trepidation to start tackling it. So my question for you is, can you give some advice for people who are in that boat where they have the problem and they just don't know where to start and how to build a strategic data governance strategy?
Yes, another big problem, you're giving me all the easy ones today. So first it starts off with actually understanding the issues. Too many times I believe, as marketers, even sometimes as agencies, we want to move fast. We have to hit a date. And we don't take the time to actually do the investigation work to understand and build a roadmap. Like that is key. Understand your environment. Make the changes that you need to make to that environment, whether it be technical, whether it be data, whether it be operational, whatever those things are, it is imperative that we have that initial lens. And then, if I were to offer somebody any type of advice, the first thing I would say is, once you understand that footprint that you have and you have a roadmap for where you want to go, build out a set of documentation that everybody shares. Everyone knows where we're going. This is vision and strategy work, right? This is road mapping. This is getting everybody on the same page, rowing the boat in the same direction. Because if you don't, you've got one group of people working on technical stuff, another group of people working on marketing stuff, another group of people working on creative stuff, and none of it aligns. So once we have that governing documentation, we can start to then engage our partners and vendors that can help us with that. So your agencies, the companies like Claravine that have tools that will enable some of the things that we talked about here today. So having the software that is consistent to the roadmap that you've set, because you understand where you are and where you want to go, is the absolute imperative. And then functionally, I think making sure that the technical teams are connected to the marketing teams, and that they're also building the technical environment that's necessary to govern this data toward that roadmap, and you're staying consistent. It shouldn't be seeded over. They should be regular touch bases. You should have a great relationship, because ultimately, if those things start to fail, you will have questions about why you're not getting the information back that you want, and then we kind of have to start this process all over again. So really, it's similar work to what we typically do, but I think sometimes it takes us calling out that it's necessary for us to have those deeper strategic conversations and understand that it may take some time to make some of these changes that are really deeply embedded into the data and technical architecture of your organization.
Okay, that wraps. Any questions?
Hey, so you said some awesome points around the use of AI and creative. Considering the fact that you guys are the largest media buyers in the world, what are some of the trends or some of the exciting things that you're really kind of looking forward in terms of the use of AI for media buying?
I think one of the biggest ones. Oh, I'll give you two, because you said media buying, not just creative. So the first one I'm going to give you is creative, and that one is around creative analytics. So we do, I think, a lot with not just understanding just basic analytics, but when you think about creative analytics, there's a whole bunch of different variables, if you will, or dimensions that are associated to creative that you may not recognize or need to care about for media. So being able to take all of those varying dimensions and use AI to analyze them to bring out the insights so that you can then put that back into your marketing is like, it's a game changer. Like, we're seeing like huge value and performance increases just from utilizing I think better data models to understand creative and how that impacts whether or not somebody converts. The second one is it allows us to also build better media plans more easily, right? It democratizes the idea of like going into a platform, choosing a budget and publishers and all those good things, and allows us to have a conversation. So at EssenceMediacom and some of the other agencies, we actually have a AI chat, right? So like an open AI, but specific for marketing. And our teams are using that. We had over 800 active users just at EssenceMediacom last month. And these are people who are planners, these are people who are strategists, and they're building better media plans and better strategies because they're able to have these conversations with AI and pull from a larger like data corpus, if you will, to get the answers that they're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you for a great chat, Laura and Therran. Therran, I love your excitement for data and creativity and data and everything you can pull out of that as a company investing in dynamic and thousands of creative versions. It gets me excited as well. So we'll have to talk more about that.
All right, thank you.